Good morning. Today is Thursday, July 6, 2023. I have spoken with you many times before about Rabbi Nota Greenblatt, who passed away last year. He was a brilliant halachic authority in every area of Jewish law. He spent most of his life living in Memphis, where I was born and raised. I knew him and was close to him my entire life. Much of his work was traveling from city to city, town to town, serving as a resource for any Jewish need. He was a mohel, a shochet, he built eruvs, he built mikvahs, he arranged for a get, he did conversions, he granted kosher supervision, he was a sofer, a religious scribe, anything that you needed, he could do it, and he did it. And the nature of his expertise and the generosity of his availability often led him to help young, inexperienced rabbis in small Jewish communities. He did this for me for the first years of my rabbinate when we lived in New Orleans, Louisiana, as he did for countless others. One Saturday night, he got a call from a young rabbi in a small town in Texas, and the rabbi was frantic. So it was just when Shabbos was over, and it was this week's Torah portion, the Parsha of Pinchas. So that morning in shul, they were supposed to read the Parsha of Pinchas, this week's Torah portion. And the rabbi said to Rav Nota Greenblatt, he said, during the Torah reading, it was discovered that our Torah was pasul. It was invalid. And we had to take out another Torah to be able to read from it. But when we took out the second Torah, it too was invalid. And we took out another Torah, and every single Torah scroll that we have is invalid, it's pasul, we can't use it. We do not have a kosher Torah. What are we supposed to do? So Rav Nota said to this young rabbi, by any chance, was the problem with the letter Vav in the word Shalom, which means peace, at the beginning of this Torah portion? So let's just review the passage. The beginning of the Parsha Pinchas, Vayedaber Hashem Moshe Lemar, God speaks to Moshe and talks about Pinchas. Remember, Pinchas had engaged in an act of zealotry at the end of last week's Torah portion. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Heshivas chamasi mi'al b'nei Yisrael. Pinchas did something that was very important because he resolved the anger that I had against the Jewish people. And I did not continue my plague against the Jewish people. Therefore, Moshe, tell Pinchas as a reward for what he did, as brisi shalom. I will give to Pinchas as brisi shalom, my covenant of shalom, of peace. God gives Pinchas his covenant of peace. So Rav Nota said, was that the problem? The Vav in the letter Shalom, was that what you're worried about? So the rabbi said, how did you know that? Yes, that's exactly the problem. And every single Torah scroll we have has the same problem. They're all invalid. So Rav Nota said to him, it's okay. You don't have any problem, because that Vav in the word Shalom is a Vav Katia, a Vav with a split in it, with a little space in it. Now, ordinarily, in any other word, that would be pasul. It would be invalid, and it would invalidate the entire Torah scroll until it was fixed. But this specific letter is supposed to be like that, so it's okay. And if for some reason it should happen that you're in shul this Shabbos and you have the opportunity to look at the actual Torah scroll at the very beginning of the parsha, see if you can find the vav with the split in it. Why is this specific letter supposed to be written in an incomplete form? So I want to share with you an approach that is partially based on an answer given by Rabbi Avram of Sakachev in his work, Shem MiShmuel. Now, in Hebrew, there are certain words that you can write with different spelling, but without changing the meaning. For example, some words can be written with the Hebrew letter Vav or without the Hebrew letter Vav. And it means the same thing and it sounds the same. When it's written with the Vav, we call that mole. The word is full. It has that extra letter. And when it is written without the letter Vav, we call that chaser, missing. It's written without that extra letter. But again, sounds the same and means the same. For example, the word Yaakov, our patriarch Jacob, could be written with a Vav as the penultimate letter, or without a Vav. It could be written mole or chaser. In the Torah, Yaakov, the name Yaakov, is always written chaser, no Vav. The name Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet, could be written with a Vav at the end or without a Vav at the end. Same word, same pronunciation, same meaning. It could be mole with a Vav at the end or chaser without the Vav at the end. And in fact, it is always written mole with a Vav at the end. Except for 5 places in the Torah. There are 5 places in the Torah where Yaakov is spelled mole with a Vav before the vet, and Eliyahu is spelled chaser without a Vav at the end. Why? So our rabbis give us a very mysterious answer. Our rabbis tell us, Yaakov notal os mishmo shel Eliyahu. Yaakov took a letter from Eliyahu's name and put it in his own name, a ravon, as a surety, as if to put it in escrow. Sheyavo vivaser geulas banav, in order to assure that Eliyahu will fulfill his mission, which is to come and announce the redemption of the Jewish people. So, Yaakov is holding on to this letter from Eliyahu's name in 5 places to make sure that Eliyahu is going to do his job, and when Eliyahu completes his mission, Yaakov will give him back the letter, so his name Eliyahu will be complete again. Okay, I mean, it's hard to understand taking a letter from somebody and holding it for them and giving it back to them. Okay, but that's what our rabbis say. The Maharal explains it as follows. Eliyahu was a man, Elijah the prophet. And we also know, we're taught, that Eliyahu, Elijah, is a harbinger. We are taught that at some time in the future, and we hope it will be soon, Eliyahu Hanavi, the prophet Elijah, will come to us and announce the imminent arrival of Mashiach, the beginning of the Messianic era and the full redemption of the Jewish people. Until that role is fulfilled, Eliyahu's life is incomplete. He has not fulfilled his final mission. And that is reflected in his shortened name, his incomplete name, because at this moment, his life's mission is incomplete. So it's incomplete in 5 places, while Yaakov is holding on to those 5 letters. in order to ensure that Eliyahu does his job, announces the redemption, and then Eliyahu gets his letters back. Okay. It's kind of hard to understand. But the next piece is even harder to understand. Our rabbis tell us that Pinchas, in our Torah portion, is Eliyahu. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means, because Eliyahu lived centuries later. Pinchas is in the Torah. Eliyahu's narrative is in the book of Kings, Sefer Malachim, 5, 6, 7, 800 years later, something like that. So, do our rabbis mean to say that somehow this person lived a miraculously long life and for some reason his name changed from one place to the other? Or do our rabbis mean that perhaps there's some connection between their personalities or their spiritual identities? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. But if the Vav is affected in Eliyahu's name, then it must also be affected in the name of Pinchas, if he is the same person in some sense. And that is why our verse, where God says, Hineni nosein lo, I will give to him, referring to Pinchas as brisi shalom, my covenant of peace. The word shalom has a vav. The vav is cut. It's not missing completely, but it's cut. Because God says, I'm giving Pinchas my covenant of peace, but it's not yet complete. It's still fractured. There is still lacking harmony. We are still alienated from each other and from God. And sadly, we see this all around us, today perhaps worse than ever, all too often in our own families, in our community, and today most dramatically and painfully in Israel. So just to take one example, the controversy over judicial reform, which we have discussed, unfolding in Israel today. Every single person I spoke with during our 2 weeks in Israel had a strong opinion on this, and I spoke with people on all sides of the debate. And while they differ bitterly among themselves about their opinion, they all agree, everyone said this to me, that this debate will determine the fate of Israel. Everything is at stake here. And several people told me, several thoughtful, intelligent people told me, and this is really frightening. They told me it is splitting apart Israeli society, and they fear, seriously, they fear, God forbid, civil war. If you just look at the news today coming from Israel, at how the animosity is deteriorating between these groups, it's frightening. We do hear a few voices of moderation and compromise from across the political spectrum, and I pray that they will prevail. But the extremists on both sides are ratcheting up the hysteria of their rhetoric, demonizing the other side. And it's frightening. I'm frightened. people in Israel are frightened. Today is the 17th day of Tammuz in the Jewish calendar. Today is a fast day. It's the beginning of the 3-week period that leads to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, on which we commemorate the destruction of both the first and the second temple in Jerusalem. We've discussed before that in recent years there has been a desire to reevaluate Tisha B'Av in light of today's reality. On Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, 3 weeks from today, we say a special prayer in the Amidah in the afternoon. The prayer starts with the word Nachem. And in that prayer, we talk about how Jerusalem is destroyed and desolate and empty of people. And people ask, well, but is that prayer really so applicable to us today? I mean, Jerusalem is rebuilt. The city is crowded. People are all over. How can we continue to say this prayer about the utter destruction of Jerusalem when in fact we have so much of it? But this question misses the point. Because what we are mourning with the destruction of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, and what we are awaiting anxiously, the rebuilding of Jerusalem with the ultimate redemption of the Jewish people, the point is not just rebuilding buildings or settling cities. Those are important and that is happening. But that's not the point. The point of the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the redemption of the Jewish people is to achieve the goal of making the Vav whole, making the Shalom, the peace, complete among ourselves and between ourselves and God, with no distance, with no barriers. And today, sadly, we recognize how far away from that goal we are. And it is lacking that causes us pain during these 3 weeks. This is the mourning of these days, not just the destroyed building, but the acrimony, the fighting, the potential, God forbid, for civil war among Jews. This is the mourning, the sadness, culminating 3 weeks from today on Tisha B'Av. This is the reason we are sad. And so that is what we must feel during these 3 weeks. This is what we must work on to hope to reinstate that full letter. Our effort during these days must be to merit somehow speedily, to solidify, to complete that Vav of Shalom, to return that letter to Eliyahu, to heal the rupture among us. And it is up to every single one of us to do our part. To do our part so that the Vav in the word Shalom of Pinchas is again whole. And the Vav being held by Yaakov is returned to Eliyahu as he becomes, once fully restored, our harbinger of redemption. My friends, I wish you a good day, an easy fast, and a meaningful period of the next 3 weeks. And I look forward to seeing you all soon in person.